Let's move on to how the public feels about this war, which is quite dissonant, especially the Democratic base, from how the elite elected officials have been supporting this war. Put this up on the screen. So we've got a whole bunch of polling from Pew Research Center. You've got Dems and lean Dems basically split on yes, no, or don't know on whether Hamas's reasons for fighting Israel are valid, regardless of how acceptable respondent views October 7th. So there's a difference here, right? You have overwhelming sentiment against thinking that October 7th was acceptable, right? There's very few in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party anywhere that say, hey, October 7th was acceptable. The question is, do you think that the reason that Hamas is fighting is valid? And you've got, in the Democrats and lean Democrats, you've got 38 saying invalid, 34 valid, and 28 not sure. And you can see here there's a significant partisan divide. You can also see, there's significant generational divide, which is, kind of a consistent theme across a lot of this polling. Let's go ahead and put this next piece up on the screen because I think this is really critical. So you have this question. Is the way that Israel is fighting this war with Hamas acceptable? And in the Democratic Party, with Democrats and lean Democrats, a majority, 52%, say it is unacceptable. Only 22% say that it is acceptable, and another 26% say that it's not that they're not sure. So, Saagar, this one really demonstrates how at odds the Biden administration is with their own base of voters and how differently those voters are viewing what is happening here.
Yeah, can we go to the next one, please, and put it up there on the screen? Because a lot of the breakdowns are actually very important. It says Americans are divided over whether Biden is striking the right balance. And quote, percent who say Joe Biden is favoring Israelis too much. Amongst Democrats, that's a full 34%. Striking the right balance is 29%. Not sure, 33%. And favoring Palestinians too much, you have 3%. So I think really what you are seeing here is a major and consolidated shift. The next one also seems very, very important to me, which is about the U.S. military aid, because again, you have in there the number on lean Democrats, and you see that the majority are not really in favor of sending aid to Israel and or not sure. But you also see, I think, some major changes kind of in the overall view of the U.S. electorate on Israel. And I think that's actually what's most important. It's not just about Democrats. We're talking here about military aid to what was previously one of the most popular countries, in the entire United States. And when we look at some of that loss and some of that breakdown, I think that that has been a societal-wide shift for which Israel is really going, I think, to pay the consequences. A lot of that started with Bibi's speech, and before Congress with Obama back in 2015. But this has really made it so that I think Israel has now basically allied itself with an explicit political party in the U.S. And we're about to get to that too with Trump, where Trump can be all over the map. On policy, he's probably going to be very, very pro-Israel. That said, that's a very, very bad strategic way to align yourself, because previously they really did have a lot more bipartisan consensus than I think where we're headed right now. I think 10, 15 years from now, the current status quo is unimaginable.
Yeah.
With the current amount of Democrats.
Well, Trump makes some interesting comments about that.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that, because you're gonna. They're just the most Trumpian comments on the subject you can possibly imagine. There was also a real commentary, if you dig into this data, on the media coverage. Because first of all, only about half of U.S. adults could even correctly answer the question of whether Israelis or Palestinians had suffered more deaths. Think about that. Only half of the U.S. public thought that they could answer that question correctly. They did not know that the toll on the Palestinian side has been multiples of times greater. And then they also tracked. So the people who said they weren't sure and didn't know which side had suffered more casualties and more deaths, they had a very different opinion of this conflict. They were much more, in general, sort of pro-Israel and likely susceptible to accept the Israeli propaganda, the Biden administration propaganda with regards to what's happening here. So I'll give you some of those numbers. They say those that were aware that more Palestinians have died are about twice as likely to say Biden is favoring Israelis too much as to say he's favoring the Palestinians too much. Among those who do not know that more Palestinians have died, you have 15% saying Biden is favoring the Palestinians too much, and only 9% say that he's favoring the Israelis too much. by 69-16, those who know that more Palestinians have died favor the U.S. providing humanitarian aid, but those who don't know the balance of casualties, only 29% favor providing aid and 23% oppose it. So, I mean, there's a few things to say here. First of all, you can see why they're so upset about TikTok and why this has, really reignited this whole conversation and a lot of political momentum around banning TikTok, because it breaks up some of the consistent propaganda that you get across mainstream media outlets to the, that is so fulsome that most Americans don't even know the very basic numbers around which side has suffered more casualties, and that dramatically impacts the way that they're viewing this conflict. I thought that was really noteworthy.
I thought it was noteworthy, but I'm going to say, I don't know if it's just TikTok. I don't spend any time. I literally don't even have TikTok, but I'm on the internet. I'm on Twitter. I think that's
it's
actually
not just
enough.
TikTok.
That's what I mean. I think it's just being on the internet.
They think TikTok is sort of like uniquely,
I don't disagree. That said, I mean, I go on my Instagram Reels, and even there I get served up, some Palestinian content or whatever. I follow a couple of guys, people who are like military analysts and others who are relatively dispassionate. More so, I would just say, if you are not consuming mainstream media, which is the vast majority of people under the age of 55, you are, I mean, this is a key theme of our show, right? You are living literally in an entirely different world than if you're just getting everything served up on CNN or MSNBC. I also think some of it comes down to moral weight. I mean, this is something we balance here on our show in terms of programming and all of that. But if you do spend any time, Krystal, looking at the vast majority of coverage that these people spend their time on, like the Trump trial and the minutia of Stormy Daniels, or MSNBC yesterday, every single hour of their show issued a segment, including Rachel Maddow, dedicated to speaking out against Ronna McDaniel. Like, that's what they think is important. And it almost gaslights like boomers and other people in this country into thinking you're like, yeah, you know what? These are the trend-setting issues of our day.
That's right.
I mean, here's, again, look, I get it. It is a balance.
When are they going to speak out against Nicole Wallace?
Right,
That's
exactly.
What I want to know.
But the reason, for today, we can lead our show here with Israel, which I don't see a lot of people in cable or other doing, is because we're like, wow, this is a breakdown in the U.S.-Israeli relationship. At the same time, it exposes a lot of stuff. It was major headline news, all across Washington. And I just don't see a lot of seriousness in the way that they have coverage. So there's a fulsome conversation where I still come down on the people of the young actually know what's up.
Yeah,
because they really, they have better prioritization of what's really important and what's not than the people who are the so-called programmers.
Absolutely the case. And it's not an accident that they fall back to their, and I'm not saying these things are like not important, what's going on with Trump. We're going to cover it too, right? But they fall back to that because that's very easy and very safe for them.
Exactly.
No one's losing their job over at MSNBC by saying Trump is bad or Trump is a criminal or whatever. But you could ask Mehdi Hasan how it went for him at MSNBC when he was not only critical of Israel, but also was willing to really aggressively challenge Israeli spokespeople who would come on his show. Guess what? He doesn't have a job there anymore. Now, you can read into that what you will, but he's not the first either. Ask Mark Lamont Hill how that went for him over at CNN.
True.
So these people are not stupid. They're careerists. They want to keep their job. They want to keep their platform. They can justify that in their minds however they want. Well, at least I can be here and say a little bit of something about something true and something real and something important. And if I'm gone, then, the next person may not even do that. But they understand what line they need to walk and where the safe space is for them in terms of their career. And so all of the incentives are in the opposite of direction of actually covering this conflict in a way just that is factual and honest as what is actually happening on the ground. And so as a result of that, you end up with a population where a majority do not even know the basic fact that Palestinians have suffered multiples more losses during this conflict than Israelis, and you end up with the views that boomers have in this conflict, and you can see consistently the generational conflict. The one other thing, Saagar, that I thought was really interesting, noteworthy, is they asked about how people felt, and these are all Americans, right, about the Israeli government, approve, disapprove. The religious group that had the highest approval rating for the Netanyahu government, you're going to guess.
Evangelicals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Way higher than Jewish Americans. They had a much higher approval rating of Bibi Netanyahu's government. So I thought that was an interesting note from this poll.
If you are ever on a plane to Tel Aviv, you're going to find it's going to be like a 10-to-1 ratio of church groups to actual Jews who are going to Israel. So
that's where the strongest support is. That's the bedrock right
And that's
there.
actually where the Israeli government and Israeli groups spend a lot of money cultivating that because they know, how powerful that is.
Oh, look at Mike Johnson, the House Speaker.
Exactly.
I
It
mean,
works.
Yeah.
Right? The investment's correct. It's not wrong.
First thing he did when he became Speaker, he passed a resolution for Israel called Bibi Netanyahu, et cetera. And it's, partly, I wouldn't just say partly, it's almost wholly because of his ideological religious beliefs.
I remember walking around Jerusalem and just seeing, you see like all of these church groups literally everywhere. I was stunned. I mean, you heard American English almost everywhere you went. And it really hit home for me. I was like, wow, this is a real, like, well-funded operation that's happening out here. And it's only opened my eyes ever since.
Yes. Hey, guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber-funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So, again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.